In Madhya, we lived in the house of Patanjala Kapya, one sage, descended from Kapi. One of the great sages' name was Kapi. Studying the scriptures on sacrifices. His wife was possessed by a Gandharva. A similar story had come earlier also. We asked him who he was. What you people do today, when they were doing then. In the house, if somebody is possessed, we begin to ask, who are you? I am so and so, speaking through this person. Possessed means that. But this story is interesting because the philosophy comes out of it. He said, who are you? And he answered, I am Kabandha, the son of Atharvan, he said. He had come and possessed. He said to Patanjala Kapya and those who studied the scriptures on sacrifices, Kapya, do you know that sutra by which this life, the next life, and all beings are held together? Now comes high philosophical discussion. Do you know that sutra? Sutra is the word for thread in Sanskrit. That thread that holds together everything. This, the word is metaphorically used for prana, the cosmic force. What is that cosmic force that holds all this world together? Take, for example, this human body. There is such diversity of function within the body, and yet perfect harmony, perfect unity is there. Some uniting force holding everything in its place, getting things work done. So, what they call differentiation and integration constitute the organic development. This organism has both these aspects, tremendous differentiation, and yet perfect integration. Function is so perfect. Similarly, taking the world as a whole, this cosmic energy called prana is that sutra. So the question is about that sutra. There. That sutra by which this life, the next life, and all beings are held together. Patanjala Kapya said, I do not know it, sir. The Gandharva said to him and the students, Kapya, do you know that internal ruler, Antaryami, that internal ruler who controls this and the next life and all beings from within, controlling from within, not from without? Do you know that? Antaryami. The Gandharva, the Kapya said, I do not know that, sir. He said, very good. The Gandharva said to him and the students, he who knows that sutra and that internal ruler, as above, indeed knows Brahman, knows the worlds, knows the gods, knows the Vedas, knows the beings, knows the self, and knows everything. This is the statement of that Gandharva saying. And then he explained it all to me, he says, saying, I know it. If you, Yajnavalkya, do not know that sutra and that internal ruler and still take away the cows that belong only to the knowers of Brahman, your head shall fall off. That is the threat that is given. You remember in the beginning, Yajnavalkya entered the court and asked his disciples to take all the cows away. He knew he will be able to answer questions asked by all the audience there. So that is the first thing he did. Why have you come? For Brahman or for the cows? For cows I have come, he said, laughing. So the cows were taken away. Now he is asking, I am asking you a question. If you don't reply, your taking away cows will be considered as really bad. So that is the context. Yajnavalkya answered, I know, O Gautama, that sutra and that internal ruler. Yajnavalkya replied, I know. But immediately Gautama said, the wonderful Uddalaka, son of Aruni, said, I know. Anyone can say, I know, I know. Tell us what you know. That is the language. Anyone, any fool, Shankara sometimes comments, any fool can say, I know, I know. Show what you know. That is called science. That is exactly the language of science. According to Thomas Huxley, it is not enough to say, I believe. You must be able to say, I believe that it is true. That is science. I believe, any fool can say. I believe it is true means the art of scientific investigation and ascertainment of the truth of the thing. That is Thomas Huxley's statement. You find here, 4,000 years earlier, the same statement. It's not enough that you say, I know. Show what you know. Demonstrate the truth of what you know. Now, the sutra, the innermost entity of the world, of Hiranyagarbha, is described. Shankara's commentary mentions it here. This is introduced through the anecdote of the story of Uddalaka and Aruni, Uddalaka Aruni and their Kapya. The Gandharva said, this is in praise of the meditation on the sutra and the internal ruler within. Whatever he said, if he knows this, he understands this world, that world, etc. he had said. That is in praise of this great knowledge of that central energy principle that initiates the unity of all things in the world. Indeed, known as Brahman, Supreme Self, it is the same Brahman, but in this particular context of the world, it becomes the Sutra or the Hiranyagarbha. This praise of the meditation on the Sutra and the internal ruler tempted Kapya and all of us to hear of it from the Gandharva. He seems to know all this. Let us also hear, Shankara says. Yeah. The Gandharva explained the Sutra and the internal ruler to them and to us. We were sitting around the Gandharva. I know this meditation on the Sutra and the internal ruler, having been instructed by the Gandharva. If you, Yajnavalkya, do not know that Sutra and that internal ruler, that means, do not know Brahman, and still wrongly take away the cows that belong only to the knowers of Brahman, I will burn you with my curses, and your head shall fall off. That is the language used by this Patanjala Kapya and this Aruni. At this, Gautama retorted, says, yes, I know. Address Yajnavalkya replied, I know that sutra, I know that internal ruler about which you have told. At this, Gautama retorted, anyone, any fool can say what you have said just now. What? I know, I know. Every fool I've been saying, I know, all the time. That won't do, he said, lauding himself. What is the good of that bluster? Show it in action. Tell us what you know about them. Shankara's commentary, adding a little more, what you call masala, into the utterance, you see, strengthening it, as it were. Now comes answer, one by one. These are all taken, as I told you, from the current theological ideas, but main subject comes immediately after. He said, Vayu, O Gautama, is that sutra. Through this sutra or Vayu, this and the next life and all beings are held together. Vayu in the sense of prana. Therefore, O Gautama, when a man dies, they say that his limbs have been loosened. See, that sutra is gone away. The limbs have been loosened. That's a typical language. When the thread is loosened, naturally everything goes apart, as it were. When a man dies, they say, to the country way of putting, that his limbs have been loosened, for they are held together, O Gautama, by the sutra or Vayu. Quite so. Yajnavalkya, now describe the internal ruler. That is the next question. The Shankara's commentary says, Vayu is that subtle entity which, like the ether, supports earth, etc., which is the material of the subtle body. Sukshma Sharira, with its 17 constituents. The subtle body in man consists of 17 constituents. What are they? Mentioned here. 10 organs, that is 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action. These are called Panchendriyas, 2 sets of Panchendriyas. Then 5 vital forces, Pancha Pranas, Prana, Apana, Apamana, etc. Finally, Manas and Buddhi. These are what constitute the subtle body of a human being. This external body is called the gross body. So we have these two bodies, Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira. That is what's called the Vayu, that is mentioned here. The material of the subtle body with its 17 constituents, in which the past actions and impressions of beings in here, they contain all the samskaras, all the vasanas. That's why in our subconscious, in our unconscious, all these past impressions are stored and they come out. They come out now and then, and in dreams they come out. So this is a truth which in the West they discovered after Freud's study of dreams, the interpretation of dreams. That study revealed that there is a subconscious behind the conscious. Conscious is at the mercy of the subconscious and the unconscious. That is exactly what constitutes recognition of the subtle body, which has just begun in the West. Sthula body, they knew. Sthula means gross. But subtle body also is there in every human being. Every action leaves a mark on the subtle body. And it acts, making for particular direction, life and action of the individual concerned. Yes. 17. Collective as well as individual. This subtle body you and I have. So also the universal soul, the cosmic soul, has also a physical body and a subtle body. Physical body is the star and suns, etc., etc. Subtle body is what you call the cosmic Hiranyagarbha, Sutra, all these belong to that subtle type of divine reality. But also the bodies, physical and subtle body. And whose external forms, like the waves of an ocean, are the 49 Maruts. Maruts also are particular type of wind gods in our Vedic tradition. That principle of Vayu is called the Sutra. Through this Sutra, or Vayu, this and the next life and all beings are held or strung together. This is the Sutra. This is well known to those who know the Sutra, says Shankara. It is also common knowledge, because Vayu is the Sutra and supports everything. Therefore, O Gautama, when a man dies, they say that his limbs have been loosened. What does it mean? Shankara says, when the thread is gone, gems, etc., that are strung on it are scattered. That we all see every day in our life. Similarly, Vayu is the Sutra. If the limbs of a man are strung on it, like gems on a thread, it is but natural that they will be loosened when Vayu is gone. Hence it is concluded, for they are held together, O Gautama, by the Sutra or Vayu. Why so? Yajnavalkya, you have rightly described the Sutra. Now describe the internal ruler who is within it and controls it. Thus addressed, Yajnavalkya said. From now begins that beautiful passage called Antaryami Brahmana. So various items of the universe are taken and said every one of them is held together by this Antaryami, the supreme internal ruler. And first sloka I read first. Yak prithivyam tishtan prithivyad antaraha yam prithivye naveda yasya prithivye shariram ya prithivye mantaro yamayari yeshate atma antaryamyamrataha. Is a very famous beginning mantra. He who inhabits the earth but is within it, not outside, inside the earth. Inside does not mean the earth called they put a pit and there, no. Inside the body of the earth is a subtle element, that is the Antaryami, whom the earth does not know. That it is there, Sutra, he doesn't know. The earth doesn't know. Whom the earth does not know, whose body is the earth and who controls the earth from within. That is the internal ruler, your own immortal self. This is the internal ruler, Antaryami, your own immortal self. That is the language. Eshate Antaryami. Amritaha, Atma, he says. So this is the internal ruler, whose body is the earth. Body and organs of the deity of the earth are regularly made to work or stop work by the mere presence of the Lord as witness. Such an Ishvara, called Narayana, who controls the deity of the earth, that is, directs her to a particular work from within, he is the internal ruler about whom you have asked, your own immortal self, devoid of any relative attributes, therefore it is immortal. Now this concept of internal ruler is a profoundly scientific concept. In normal life, we explain a thing by invoking something from outside. Suppose you say, door is shaking, oh, a ghost is there, shaking the door. We go on. Hundreds of such assumptions we have. But a scientist will come, no, it is not due to ghost or anything. He will study what kind of air is blowing or some other function is there and exactly fix up the thing within itself. Something within itself is the cause of what makes it moving, etc. Similarly, in the human body, even the question of possession by a ghost, we do not have that as a scientific concept. Ghost possession and all that. Something is wrong within. Some structural defect, functional defect, you will find out. That's what science will do. They won't bring in question of a devil who came and did something here. Scientific explanation is explanation from within the thing itself. External things you come only when you are in superstition and not otherwise. So that this concept of internal functioning, something right, something wrong, they find out what is what. That is how science proceeds to understand the world around us. In the primitive state, everything is controlled by a god, by a what you call a devil or some Satan, etc. So many things we have. But that is all right, as good story. You come to down to science. That's what we are doing now more and more. When it is disease, let us find out what is wrong inside. Nothing to do outside. We shall find out what is wrong. Set right it, the whole thing. I have seen a person when I was a boy. He became what you call a little excited and some sort of a fit came upon him. Some religious fit. So a doctor came, gave an injection. 5 minutes later, all the fit vanished. It became quite normal again. Now, if that injection was not there, he would have said, a ghost has come and possessed him, and we have to remove the ghost, then bring the Antarvadi. All these things are needed. Here it is not necessary. We know the subject that is within the troubling the person. If we do not know it, well, there are other factors, we leave it at that. But if people want to follow the other method, it doesn't matter. If actually can produce a result, well and good. So pragmatically, there is a place for such methods. But really, a scientific method will eliminate all external factors, explain everything from within itself. That is the importance of this principle of Antaryamin. In all monotheistic religions, especially of the Semitic family, God is always outside nature. Everything in nature is manipulated from outside. And most anti-scientific attitude. That is why when science has developed, religion in the West became opposed to it, suppressed it, killed a few scientists because they have become trying to explain things from within the nature of the universe itself without reference to an external deity. Ultimately, that deity has gone away. Today, nobody believes that there is a God sitting outside the universe. Nobody believes in it, except, of course, thoughtless people, not thinking people. They will still believe. But a scientific mind will say, yes, if there is a God, you have to find him within the universe itself. Yes, all this is functioning that way. In this way, we developed this concept of Antaryamin, eliminated external factors to explain behavior of things and events. There is a very tremendous advance in the method of explanation. So Antaryami belongs to that category. Within each one of us, at the physical level, at this neurological level, at the mental psychic level, everywhere there is an inner self, inner what you call energy. That is balanced, healthy life comes. In unbalanced, life becomes unhealthy. Let us keep it all balanced. There, for example, secretions in the body. Let us balance the secretions. then your health of the body will be perfect. If there is any change in the balancing of the secretion, body will be subject to trouble. Let us restore that balance. That's what a scientist would say. If it is beyond the physical level, then go to the nervous system and the brain. There also things can be set right. Suppose there is some sort of headache, you just remove a particular clot in the head, in the brain, and headache also goes. Yesterday a person came. He was actually having severe headaches, and the doctors discovered through scanning that there is a particular point where a little clot has come. We would have discussed some ghost has come and that, all that till now. Now we don't need all that. We just found a clot there. Cut open this, removed it without any difficulty. 20 minutes it took and stitched up. Man is perfectly all right. So in this way, this Antaryami principle is a profound scientific principle. Explanation of a thing or an event from within itself, not invoking an external force to explain it. This is the nature of this wonderful concept of Antaryami. This is the first. First, the earth is taken. Second, he says, Yo apsutishtan. The rest is similar. He who inhabits water, but is within it, whom water does not know, whose body is water, who controls water from within, is the internal ruler, your own immortal self. To explain water from within, H2O is water. So much hydrogen, so much oxygen. That is water. Wonderful explanation. This way, inside the Antaryami functions, the spiritual level at the depth as H2O at the surface level. This is what we try to understand a thing from deeper and deeper point of view. Mere physical explanation may not be satisfactory in some cases. You have to go deeper, deeper, but all within, not outside. That's language. Depth study of matter. Take, for example, the depth study of matter. You have nuclear forces within matter. We never knew it before. We are only studying the depth. Ultimately, now we study the nuclear forces that are there, and that's a tremendous advance in the understanding of the material world. Then, next is he who inhabits fire. Second, earth, water, fire. Next is the sky. Next is air again. Next is heaven. Next is the sun. Next is the quarters. Next is the moon and stars. One by one, these are coming. Simple translation is given here. Then the ether, akasha. Then the darkness. Then light. Inside the light, there is a Antaryami holding light together. Light. And then finally, a summing up in verse 15 of this section 3.7, 15 verse says, Yas sarveshu bhuteshu tishtan, sarvebhyo bhutebhyo antaraha, yam sarvani bhutani na viduhu, yasya sarvani bhutani shariram, yas sarvani bhutani antaro yamayati, eshate atma Antaryami amrita iti adibhutam. That is the dealing with material universe, adibhutam. Next, adhyatmam, dealing with the inner life of man. There also, how we describe the Antaryami, we shall deal with it later. He says, He who inhabits all beings, but is within them, whom no being knows, whose body is all beings, and who controls all beings from within, is the internal ruler, your own immortal self. This much with reference to these physical external beings. Now with reference to the body, adhyatma means regarding the self, what is within the body. Let us see. We are seeing only the world outside. That is cosmological. This is the individual human body. Yam grane tishtan. Series of statements come here. He who inhabits the nose, who inhabits organ of speech, eye, various things come there. Then ultimately, various items of the human body are taken. He who lives in it, itself doesn't know it is there, but it is regulated by that particular Antaryami. That is how commonly described all items. Then comes in the 23rd verse. Very wonderful statement. Adrishto drashta. This Antaryami is the seer of all, itself unseen. Adrishto drashta. Now comes your philosophy here. Adrashto drashta. Ashruta shrota. You can't hear him, but he hears everything. Ashruta shrota. Amato manta. He thinks of all things, but no thinking can discover him. Avijñāto vijñāta. He knows everything, but nothing can know him. Nānyo ato asti drashta. There is no seer other than that. See the language. Na anyo ato asti drashta. Anyo drashta. Na asti. There is no seer other than the antaryami. There. Na anyo ato asti manta. No other knower or thinker than this antaryami. Na anyo ato asti vijñāta. No other knower other than this antaryami. Eshate atma antaryami amrataha. This is yourself, immortal, inner self. This is the beautiful language. Having said this, the text says, Ato anyadartham. Other than this, everything else is mortal. This alone is immortal. Everything else is mortal. Ato anyadartham. Tatoha uddalaka arunehi upararama. Listening to this, Uddalaka Aruni retreated from the question and answer session. He became silent. This is the particular subject here. So, there is no other witness but him. See the language. The word witness, sakshi, is a profound philosophical term. Sakshi. Whenever you speak of change, you invoke the concept of sakshi. Change cannot be perceived unless there is a sakshi who sees the change. If two people are talking together and both go away, who will report? Nobody can report. If a third person was there as a sakshi, he can report. These two talked and went away. So, sakshi is a profound philosophical concept in Vedanta. That this ego of the waking state, ego of the dream state, egolessness of the sleep state is known to one particular reality within. That is the sakshi. That is also the turiya, the fourth. That is the atman. That is our true self. The waking ego is not our true self. Dream ego is not our true self. And non-existence of everything is not our true self. The self is ever present before existence of things, non-existence of things. Behind that is the infinite atman. That is our self. That is how it is put here. He is the internal ruler. There is no other witness but him. Similarly, no other knower, no other hearer, no other knower, immortal, devoid of all relative attributes. It is the internal ruler, your own immortal self, directly pointing out the person in front. This is your own immortal self. Everything else but him, this Ishvara or Atman, is mortal. This is the only immortal reality. Everything comes and goes. The one who is able to say this is the one who remains all the time to be able to say, A came when, B came and when, C came and when, the whole universe has gone away. Who says so? The one who was always there. Change cannot be understood without this changeless reality behind it. That is the Atman, that is your own self. That is how this Upanishad and all the other Upanishads expounded the depth dimension of the human personality. Through that, we discovered God. Through the human personality, we discovered the divine. The same self is one in all. It is a sutra connecting all together. The infinite one. I am one with you. How? Through God. I am one with you. Through God. He is the infinite one running through all of us. This is the tremendous statement in this Upanishad, and this will be further developed when Gargi returns for asking two more questions, which we shall take up next Sunday. Today we enter into chapter 8 of book 3. As I said last Sunday, chapter 8 sees Gargi coming once again to address Yajnavalkya. Earlier she had put some question, Yajnavalkya had answered, and she had sat down. Then others took up the question. Now Gargi stands up once again to ask Yajnavalkya 2 questions. And the whole assembly is in Janaka's court in Videha, northern Bihar. It looks so contemporary, though it is 4,000 years old. There you will find Brahman, we discussed, free from hunger and thirst and all these relative attributes, ever pure, ever free. That is the source of this universe. We are also one with that truth. This had been spoken of earlier. And this Brahman, also known as the Atman, was described in a previous chapter as the death of death. A wonderful subject. Death is frightening to all of us. But death is afraid of the Atman, because that is immortal. So the language is death of death. There are a few such expressions in our spiritual and literary tradition. One is this called death of death. The infinite Atman, immortal, is described as the death of death. Death has no place wherever the Atman is. When we realize the Atman, we go beyond all death. That is one expression. Second expression is very interesting. We have sleep. And there is a state of spiritual development where you put sleep to sleep. That's the idea. You put sleep to sleep. What a wonderful thing. In the awakening of yoga, we put sleep to sleep. In one of the songs of the Gospel of Ramakrishna, you will find this. I have put sleep to sleep in the awakening of yoga. Sleep actually means away from reality. And therefore, when we realize the reality, we put sleep to sleep. Ignorance to sleep, as it were. So that is another expression. And the third one relates to Sri Krishna and Shiva, or the sage like Shuka. All are attracted by the sense organs towards sensory objects. Everybody can be drawn by the sense organs to the sense objects. This is typified by what we call Kamadeva, the god of love. He can bring anybody's mind and senses down to the world of objects. He is called also Manmatha in Sanskrit. Manmatha, Kamadeva, or Cupid in Greek mythology. He tried his trick on all. He succeeded. But he tried it on Shiva, and he was burned away by Shiva. There is a story of Shiva. That infinite divine nature in us can destroy this Manmatha, this Cupid, or this Kamadeva. So Kamadahana is a very important story in our mythology. When you come to Sri Krishna, same idea is expressed. In the Bhagavatam 10th book, Krishna came. Instead of saying Krishna came, Sakshat Manmatha Manmataha is the word used there. The Manmatha of Manmathas. All Manmathas will be attracted by Sri Krishna to himself. No Manmatha can attract him towards something else. So that expression is a beautiful expression. Unless you have a depth psychology, where we have come to the infinite Atman behind the body-mind complex, we can't develop these various expressions. We had that philosophy, therefore we could develop these expressions. And so, Sakshat Manmatha Manmataha. Swami Turiyananda spoke about Swami Vivekananda in America. He was a young man of 29. And after the Parliament of Religion address, first day's address, the whole Parliament became overjoyed. And people started moving towards the platform to have a closer look. Students of Vedanta who was present at the Parliament of Religions, she has written what she saw in that Parliament. That you get in the Reminiscences of Vivekananda. when hundreds of young men and women and large number of young women going from bench after bench towards Swami Vivekananda on the platform. Swamiji was young, these are all young people, women, and that lady sitting there, back, says to her, "My dear young man, if you can stand that onslaught, you are not a man but a God himself." She has recorded it in her conversation. So in this connection, Swami Turiyananda, who was a fellow disciple of Vivekananda, when narrating the story, when Swamiji was in America, some young women tried to draw him to themselves, but he drew them all up to himself. This language he has used. He drew all of them up to the consciousness of the Atman, divine awareness. Now these are all so understood in our society. As Shuka in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he is also described Sarvabhuta Hridayam, is the self in the heart of all beings. He identified himself with all. Nothing can attract him downwardly. So Shuka is always described as eternally pure, who always saw the same Atman in every being. So in our literature, we get such statements based upon the depth dimension of the human personality which our sages discovered, that eternal self, ever pure, ever free, ever awakened. And therefore, we can speak of death of death in this Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka. And we can speak of putting sleep to sleep in the awakening of yoga in our famous song which Ramakrishna used to sing. And in this case, also the Cupid of Cupids, attracting all Cupid to oneself. What a beautiful conception. So these are the three fine descriptions which can come only from a philosophy which has dived deep into the divine dimension of the human personality. But much of modern psychology is far away from it. They cannot understand the depth dimension of the human being. They can't understand that a man can be perfectly pure, absolutely untouched by any attractions of the world. They cannot understand it at all, because they see all around them only such people. But our culture has produced thousands of such men and women who had gone beyond the body consciousness, absolute oneness with all. And so the sensory level of life we treat it as ordinary at the beginning stage. We can go beyond it, and a few achieve complete transcendence of the sensory limitation. Those few you can describe as manmatha. No manmatha can attract them. They will attract manmathas to themselves. That is how Krishna is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So also Shuka, and today Sri Ramakrishna, the Vivekananda, they belong to that category. So we enter into the next chapter, 8, where Gargi comes once again. And that is the most interesting section of this book. Just reading Shankara's introduction to the chapter. Now Brahman, which is devoid of hunger and thirst, etc., as we have seen in the previous question-answer of the Upanishad, unconditioned, immediate and direct, sakshat aparokshat, and is within all of us. That is our true nature. That has to be described. Therefore, the present section begins. Shankara says, now the text. Ataha vachakna vyuvacha brahmana bhagavanto hantam aham imam dvau prashnau prakshami tauchenme kakshati navaijatu vishmakam imam kaschit brahmodyam jayateti pricha gargi. Earlier, Gargi had asked this question. Then Yajnavalkya had replied. And Yajnavalkya had said, don't put too subtle questions. will not be answerable. Therefore, keep quiet. That was the previous chapter. And now, before she puts the question, she asks permission of the audience. I want to ask this question of Yajnavalkya. So this text says, then the daughter of Vachaknu, Vachaknavi, and daughter of Vachaknu, that is Gargi, she said, revered Brahmanas, I shall ask him 2 questions. Should he answer me those, none of you can ever beat him in describing Brahman. She takes permission. And the whole audience said, Pricha Gargi. Yes, ask Gargi. We are all interested. Just like a contemporary scene you are getting here. Then the daughter of Vachaknu, Shankara comments, said, having previously been warned by Yajnavalkya, she had desisted lest her head should fall off. Says, be careful. Murdhate vivitishyati, that he had just said earlier. So this time, she asked permission of the Brahmanas to interrogate him once more. Revered Brahmanas, please listen to what I say. I shall ask him, Yajnavalkya, 2 more questions, if you will permit it. Should he answer me those, none of you can ever possibly beat him in describing the nature of Brahman. Thus addressed, the Brahmanas gave her the permission. Ask, O Gargi, Pricha Gargi. That is a simple statement. Now Gargi stood up and she formulates her question. It's a very wonderful comparison. Here see. Sa hovacha aham vaitva Yajnavalkya yatha kashyo va vaideho va ugraputraha pujyam dhanur adhijyam kritva dvau banavantau sapatnativyadhinau haste kritva upothishtet evamevaham tva dvabhyam prashnabhyam upodastham tau me bruhiti. That is her question. And Yajnavalkya, Pricha Gargi iti. Yes, you can ask. Please ask. What did he say? She said, I shall ask you 2 questions. As a man of Benares, or the king of Videha, scion of a warlike dynasty, might string his unstrung bow and appear close by, carrying in his hand 2 bamboo-tipped arrows highly painful to the enemy. Even so, O Yajnavalkya, do I confront you with 2 questions. Answer me those with that challenge. She put the question. Yajnavalkya calmly said, Pricha Gargi iti. Please ask Gargi. He was absolutely sure. Shankara's commentary comes. Very interesting. Swami Vivekananda refers to this particular incident in some of his lectures. And he says that whenever a thing is a custom, you don't make a special mention of it. If it is not a custom, you speak a special mention of it. Here it is a custom for women to take part in discussions, in intellectual assemblies, etc. That is why you don't find in a special reference here, Gargi, though a woman came to the assembly and asked the question. No reference at all. They are absolutely natural. It is accepted. That is the one reference Vivekananda makes to this particular incident. So, having received the permission from the assembled people, Gargi said to Yajnavalkya, I shall ask you 2 questions. The extra words are to be supplied in the preceding paragraph. Yajnavalkya was curious to know what they were. So, in order to indicate that the questions were hard to answer, she said through an illustration, as a man of Benares, the inhabitants of which are famous for their valor. Remember the story of Benares. Today I don't know what valor they have. They have